Have you ever listened to a pastor on stage at church or on a video message like this tell you at the end of their sermon, let's be like Jesus this week, and thought to yourself, well, great, I'll do my best to do that, ma'am. But in your head think, what the heck does that even mean? How am I supposed to practically be like Jesus anyways? I can tell you that if that has been you before, you're not alone. I remember I literally will never forget being a new Christian and hear some pastor say that to me from stage, that exact same thing. Be like Jesus. And I remember feeling extremely lost. My guess is that whether you're a new Christian, have been a Christian for a while, or are brand new to this whole church thing, that you felt confused by that statement, be like Jesus, at some point in your life. Here's what I've discovered has caused the confusion around that statement, be like Jesus. There's really two problems. The first, when we hear be like Jesus, if we're honest, we don't actually know very much about Jesus' life. And so how could we possibly be like someone we really don't know? And the second, if we do know about Jesus' life, we aren't taking action and on a consistent basis practicing being like him in our everyday lives. And so today, we're going to start to answer both of those questions. Who was Jesus, and how can we commit to being more like him? To answer who Jesus was, let's look at one of the most well-known stories in the Bible of Jesus modeling love and humility for his disciples. This story takes place on a night that was like any other night to the disciples, but to Jesus, this was the last night he was going to be with them before he was crucified. On his last night, the story tells us how Jesus chose to spend his time. In 1 John 13, verse 5, we read, Jesus poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. On this last night of Jesus' life, he chose to wash his disciples' feet. Kind of weird, right? If it were me, I would have wanted to throw a party with all of my friends and just hang out and have a good time. But Jesus chooses to serve his disciples. At this time in history, it would have been outrageous for Jesus, the disciples' Messiah and Rabbi, to be washing their feet. Hear me out. You think that feet are gross now? Back then, they didn't wear sneakers or closed-toed shoes and didn't have modern plumbing systems. So their nasty toes were just squishing in some pretty gross stuff, if you know what I mean. Traditionally, people's feet were washed as they'd enter into a home by a servant. To compare what Jesus is choosing to do for his disciples, it would kind of be like your friend just showing up to your house to do all of your grossest chores for you and expecting nothing in return. Like choosing to clean your dirty toilet, or picking up after your dog in the backyard, or taking out the nasty trash in your house that's been sitting for weeks. Jesus took on the role of a servant to teach his disciples the importance of serving one another. This is only one story out of a substantial amount of stories in the Bible that show Jesus as being humble and choosing to serve others. But from it, we learn one primary characteristic that helps us to identify specifically how we can become more like him. We need to serve others in humility. So, what does it look like practically for us to consistently be like Jesus and to serve others? Here's one student story that I think has answered that question. Shout out to my girl Lila at the Anthem campus. Whoop whoop. Lila's family story is one that probably a lot of us can relate to, or if you can't personally relate, my guess is that you have a friend that has a similar family story to hers. She grew up with quite a lot of conflict in her home. Eventually, all this conflict led to her parents getting a divorce last year. And around that same time, Lila started coming to church and she heard about the story of Jesus. And so going into 8th grade last year, Lila went to camp. And just as a little side note, if you're not signed up for camp yet, you definitely should. And I'm guessing that Lila would tell you that exact same thing. And so after Lila's amazing experience at camp, she came home and she said, you know what? I want to get baptized. But she felt like her life wasn't put together enough. she didn't know enough about Jesus or this whole Christianity thing yet to get baptized. This part of her story I think is so cool though. Lila was having a conversation with one of her coaches at camp and basically saying that she didn't feel like she was ready to get baptized. But her coach, Paige, said something profound. She said, "Lila, you're probably never going to feel ready to be baptized. You just need to commit." So that's what Lila did. She got baptized, and almost immediately she started serving in kids ministry on the weekends. Lila mentioned that a lot of people she knows say that they don't know if they can commit to serving or have the time to, or even if they are the right person. And in response to this, Lila said, "Serving is one of the best things that I have literally ever done. I love seeing kids get excited about Jesus and actually understand what it means to follow him at such a young age." Lila also mentioned that she wishes that she had someone when she was in elementary school teaching her about Jesus so that she could have started her faith sooner. So she's so excited that she gets to now do that for others. I asked Lila how committing to serve others has helped her become more like Jesus, and she said, "I'm more compassionate. I don't think of myself as like the main character anymore." She said that she's realized that she's not the only one that has hard things going on in her life, so she's able to show Christ's love more consistently in her life to others like she has personally experienced. Lila said that before starting to serve, she didn't feel like her life had any purpose. But since serving, she feels like she is making a difference in the world and now has a purpose. Friends, Lila's story is so inspiring to me because she became more like Jesus by committing to serve others. Maybe you're not quite there yet though. Maybe right now you're feeling like you're not really the right fit for volunteering in kids. Well, guess what? There's literally so many other ways that you can serve. Here's just a few. You could serve at the coffee shop and make some drinks. You could make some food at the grill or take people's orders at the register. You could be on the hype squad and welcome people to church. You could play an instrument on the worship team. You could be doing production behind the scenes. There's literally so many options for you. And if you want to start serving, we have a place for you. Maybe that's not your reason why you haven't started yet. Maybe you haven't committed to serving because you don't feel like you are strong enough in your faith yet to serve others. Just imagine if all of us in this room decided to follow in Lila's example and listen to her coach Paige's wise advice. You're probably never going to feel ready, but you need to just commit. I would imagine that if we began to change others' lives by showing up and serving them like Jesus would, and as a result of doing that, my guess is that we would grow in our own relationship with Jesus just like Lila has. I think this final question Lila answered is the perfect place for us to wrap up. I asked, what would you say to someone who is kind of on the fence about serving? She said, first, just do it. Just do it. Serving is literally life-changing, and your faith with God has the potential to grow so much if you just commit and say yes. Hearing Lila's story, it's clear to me that because she committed to serve others, her relationship with Jesus grew stronger, and it was evident that it was easily one of the best decisions of her life. Friends, serving others is one of the best commitments you could ever make. And my hope for every one of us this week is that we would be Christ-centered difference makers that commit to being like Jesus and choose to serve others.